This happened about 3 years ago. I was 18 at the time, and on a road trip with my family and dogs. At about 7 one night, we stopped in a little mountain town to stay the night and explore the woods, hiking trails. After our hike, we drove around until we found a cheap motel. It was pretty run down, but pretty much the only place with a room available that would take our family of 5 and 2 dogs. It was pretty far out of the way of the rest of the town. No other buildings in sight. The motel was shaped like an L, and our room was the corner of the L, irrelevant later. There was a front door and a back door that led out to the parking lot of the motel in a grassy wooded area. It was probably about 10 at night. By this point, we were all winding down for the night. I was having trouble falling asleep and decided to get up and take the dogs out for a walk and get some fresh air. It was pitch black out at this point. No city lights or anything, as it was a small town, and I got a really creepy feeling when I went outside. You know, the hair on the back of your neck standing up, all of that. The dogs seemed uneasy too, and I wanted to just brush it off, as they probably just sensed all of the wildlife around us. But I hurried the dogs back into the room and made sure both the front and back doors were locked. Maybe only 2 or 3 minutes after I got back into the hotel room, I heard the front door knob gently rattle, like someone was trying to quietly open it. I just froze. My entire family was asleep, and I was 2 seconds away from waking my dad up. Then the doorknob jiggled even harder, and then whoever was out there started pounding on the door. Obviously, my family woke up at this point, just in time to hear someone right on the other side of that crappy, flimsy motel room door start yelling at us to let him in. We all were just kind of frozen, and my dad starts yelling back, telling the guy out there to get lost or he'll call the cops. The knocking and yelling stops, and we figure he got scared off. Then the guy comes around to the back door and repeats the same process. I honestly don't know how those cheap doors held him back. Maybe he didn't want to get in that bad. But he eventually gave up, probably from the combination of my dad's threats and 2 very large dogs losing their minds barking. Thinking back to that, I just get a sick feeling to my stomach. What if I hadn't locked the doors as soon as I got back? Had the guy been watching me outside and decided to follow me back to my room? It was just odd that he knew to go around to the back door and check that too. Mel, 17. My neighbor has a complicated reputation with my family, and I've heard a few stories over the years of their interaction. He's around 70, with a 2-story house on a street of otherwise 1-story houses. I have anxiety and avoided talking to adults as a kid, so I've never directly talked to him, but my mom tells me that he once blew a foghorn at our dogs for barking, reported my other dog as dangerous, just because we had to chase him down the street after he ran off. And according to her, he does quite often around the block. He watches things to make things safer and confronts people about it. She says, as I go out to the backyard a few times a day to smoke and usually haven't seen any issues with it because we have tall fences and I never noticed anyone around. But recently, I've seen movement behind the fence and crunching of leaves, and yesterday I am 99% sure I saw a white robe through the cracks of the wood, which he wears. Both me and my mom think he's watching me, and it creeps me out a lot, but she doesn't seem to think it's an issue. I've started going out to the shed instead, because I don't feel comfortable anymore in the open. I think he's a creep. My husband and I treated ourselves to a night at a hotel in downtown Chicago. We don't get to do things like that usually, so it was awesome. The rates were very inexpensive, and there were certain things you had no access to, room service and the minibar, but we didn't care. Since there wasn't room service, we ordered off of Uber Eats. Nothing fancy, just pot bellies. I went downstairs and it's 10 p.m. to wait and smoke a cigarette. To be kind, I went around to the side, but still, near the front, there was no one walking around. I got the food, but decided to finish smoking around the side. Suddenly, a really nicely dressed dude with a camo mask walked up to me and asked me for a cigarette. Normally that's not an issue, but he seemed off a bit. I can't explain it, except to say as soon as he asked me, I felt like something was wrong. His voice sounded odd. When I gave him a cigarette, it got really close. Then it started to get scary. He asked for some food. I felt bad, but it wasn't possible to give him food. It was just 2 sandwiches. I said I was sorry, but it was for my husband and I. Figured he'd leave and I could finish smoking. Instead, he walked up so close, he was against the food bag, and I was against the other side, almost pressing the glass. Then he asked me for some food again, and when I said no, I'm really sorry, he insisted I could, but I was lying. He was getting angry, but he wasn't yelling, so as not to attract attention, I guess. I continued like that for a few minutes, then he asked me to use my lighter. I gave it to him, and he started in on how I was lying again. He insisted I could give him food. Then he asked if I worked there, not a specific place, and I said I was staying at the hotel. I was already really nervous. He asked where I was staying, and I asked why, and he said because there were a lot of hotels in the area. I pointed at the hotel behind me. I don't know why. I was really anxious by this point. This whole interaction so far was scary, and I usually have no issues dealing with people. However, he was getting pushier and angrier. And then he said, "So, you're staying here?" I said yes. During this entire time, he kept saying I was lying about the food. He started getting closer and closer to me as I backed up. He kept angrily insisting I could give him food, but didn't want to. And I said, "No, I'm sorry, I can't." We were already too close for comfort and safe distances. He was pressing again. The bag I was holding against my chest and his face was inches from mine. He then said, "So, you're here with your boyfriend?" I said husband, and I saw him check my hand. I started walking backwards to the back door, which was about 50 feet away. I thought if I didn't act afraid, it would turn out better. But I was afraid. His cigarette was lit, and he was still holding my lighter. People usually give it back at this point. He continued demanding some food. I felt it was time to be more assertive, so I demanded my lighter back, and he started getting angry at me, saying over and over that I could give him some food. He then gave my lighter back, but then grabbed both of my arms. I started getting terrified and banging on the glass door with my elbow to get the receptionist's attention. But she ignored me. I got pissed and said something, but I was so scared. I wasn't paying attention, I just wanted help. If anyone reading this knew me, they'd know I'd never bang on a window yelling help, unless I felt absolutely terrified. I started crying, because I was alone on a side street at night, and no one could help me. I had no thoughts but to get away. I wasn't thinking he'd hurt me in a specific way. I just thought danger and run. That's how scared I was. He got angry that I was crying and pulled me closer. Suddenly something happened that changed everything, and I am so grateful. My mom called. I had my earbuds in, which he couldn't see because of my hood was up on my coat. So I pressed answer and started crying hysterically and almost screaming. "He's trying to attack me! He's trying to attack me!" That really angered him because he tightened his grip for a second, but also startled him and he let go. I ran to the doors while still crying and shaking. I crawled all the way back to the room. My mom comforted me on the phone and told me not to go outside again. My husband was so comforting and sweet. He just held me and then wanted to know everything. I had to say it a few times because I was still crying and couldn't breathe. Plus, I was talking fast. I saw him again at maybe 1 a.m. I was standing in front of the hotel this time by those tall ashtray things and have outside restaurants and hotels. I went inside and I saw him through the glass, where he had assaulted me. I don't know if he was waiting on me or what, but it terrified me. That night, another person asked me for a cigarette, and it was a really nice woman. She thanked me, but she could tell I was upset, I guess. She asked and I told her. She sympathized and explained that's why she carried a very small handgun, which was in her purse. I'm definitely getting mace, so this doesn't happen again. Let me previse this post by explaining that at this time of this incident, I was 21 years old in 2003, and I felt like I knew everything. I made poor choices, and I feel like I learned a lot from this experience. So let me begin. At the time of this encounter, I lived in New Jersey, and I wanted to move to New York. My friend and I decided that we would find an apartment and room together if we could find it for the right price. I went on the search for this place. I found a basement apartment that was being rented out by a husband and wife. I thought, this sounds great. The price was great, and it was a couple, so no danger, right? Wrong. So I set up an appointment with the husband to come by and check out the place, where he reassured me that his wife would be home as well, so that we could meet her. The date was set. It was scheduled for about a week out. I figured we should be good for my friend and me to go down there. The day came and my friend stated that she couldn't get out of work, but begged me to go so that we didn't miss out on this opportunity if it was nice. So I took a bus from where I live in New Jersey to Long Island, New York, and then I got there. The man met me at the bus station. I thought that was strange, but was grateful for the lift. He said I figured I would make sure you made it safe to my place and didn't get lost. I thought this was also very weird because the bus stop was only about a block from his house. I still didn't listen to the alarm bells in my head, and I went inside the house with him. When I got to the home, I fully expected the wife to be at the house, but he then said that his wife had to suddenly go to work, so it would just be him showing me the place. Again, I reluctantly continued on. I went to the basement, saw the apartment, it looked great. It was a really nice place, and he started being less creepy, which helped me to relax more. A big mistake on my part, I know. He asked if I smoked weed, and at the time I did. So he asked if I wanted to light up with him. Again, I know it was another bad choice I made. I said yes, and after the second hit, I felt way off. I have smoked some serious weed in my day, but this was not like anything I have ever experienced. I knew it was time to go, and go fast. I said to the man, I have to go now, and he kept trying to get me to rest and relax. But I kept saying no, I have to leave, so I started walking out of the basement and the house, and he was following me slowly. He wasn't chasing me, he didn't grab me, he just kept following me and telling me to come back to his place in a calm, creepy voice. I was so lucky that I made it to the bus stop right as the bus had pulled up. I looked at the bus driver and said, "This man just roofied me and is trying to get me back to his place." The bus driver asked me where I was going. I told him. I sat down on the bus and I blacked out. I didn't wake up again until I got to my hometown in New Jersey. Again, I know I made a stupid choice when I was younger, and I have no idea what his intentions were, but to the man with the bad intentions, I hope you have been caught. A few years ago, my mother asked if I could go to her house and let the exterminator in. She told me not to leave him alone and to follow him around and ask questions. I wasn't sure what kind of questions she meant, but sure, I can open a door, follow someone around, and annoy them. The exterminator arrives and I follow him from room to room, asking whatever questions come to mind. Have you been getting a lot of calls for stink bugs? Did you ever need to get a rabies shot? What's the largest thing you've ever had to exterminate? For an hour, I followed this man around while he patiently answered my ridiculous questions. He said he enjoyed our conversation. 2 days later, I was watching the news and see that the body of a local doctor was found bound in her basement. Her corpse was lit on fire. The very next day, the news flashes a photo of the man arrested for the murder of the doctor. He looks very familiar to me. I get a full body chill. It turns out the doctor was having an issue with mice and called an exterminator. The same one my mother called the day after I asked the man, "What's the largest thing you've ever had to exterminate?" He apparently snapped because the doctor was rude, asked too many questions, and talked down to him.